All right, we're moving into chapter 6, more structure class words. So in the last chapter, we looked at determiners, we looked at auxiliaries, qualifiers, and then we looked at most of the pronouns. We have a few more pronouns to pick up on with chapter 6. I've divided chapter 6 into two videos. The second video is a supplementary video that will talk about punctuation and such. So let's go ahead and get started with chapter 6. And we're going to start out with prepositions. Okay, so the structure class word we're looking at is prepositions. You may have had some device for learning how to recognize prepositions when you were in grade school. I've had some students say they learned a preposition song, or maybe you learned that a prepositional phrase is anything a plane can do to a cloud: over the cloud, through the cloud, under the cloud, in the cloud. So prepositional phrases, they're called prepositional because they're in preposition to a noun, like in the attic, up the path, after lunch, since Easter. So you can see that the preposition after is it's in preposition to a noun. The prepositional phrase itself is going to function as either an adverb or an adjective. So, for example, the toys in the attic are dusty. The toys in the attic is describing the toys. Therefore, it's an adjective. The whole phrase is an adjective. The toys are in the attic. There, the prepositional phrase in the attic is an adverb telling us where the toys are. Okay, so those are prepositional phrases. Prepositional phrases can sometimes, the preposition itself rather, can sometimes be confused with what's known as a verb particle. So look at these two sentences and let's think about them. The first one, Oscar looked up the road, and the second one, Oscar looked up the word. Well, different things are going on there with the word up. In the first sentence, up the road is a prepositional phrase, and it's telling us where he looked. He looked up the road. The second one isn't telling us where he looked. What he did was he looked up the word. So looked up in the second one, to look up, is what's called a phrasal verb. And up is what's called the verb particle. So a phrasal verb there, you could substitute another word there. Instead of Oscar looked up the word, you could say he referenced the word. So you might see what I mean here. A phrasal verb is a verb that consists of a verb, a main verb, plus what's known as a particle. So let's see, let me go here to what's the difference. A phrasal verb has a complete meaning. You can often substitute another word for the phrasal verb. As I said, Oscar referenced the word. And often another way to tell the difference is that you can move, not always, but often, you can move the particle away from the verb it's attached to. So you could say Oscar looked the word up, or Oscar looked up the word. And then finally, sometimes you might not know if you have a verb particle or an adverb. And usually adverbs are optional. If you had Oscar looked the word up, if up were an adverb, you could remove it, but just Oscar looked the word, it doesn't work. So up is not just an adverb. Let's see. As modifiers, adverbs give us information about time, place, or manner, and verb particles don't. Rather, the meaning is contained in the verb that it's connected to. All right, let's practice a little with them. So I looked over my notes before the exam. To look over, you didn't literally look over your notes. Rather, you looked over your notes. So look over is a phrasal verb. It has a meaning. I studied my notes. I reviewed my notes. See how you could substitute a single verb for the phrasal verb there. And over is a verb particle. It could move. I looked my notes over. The second one, the cow jumped over the moon. Well, over the moon here is a prepositional phrase. Over is a preposition. And the prepositional phrase is an adverb telling us where the cow jumped. And the third one, the bookcase fell over. You could just say the bookcase fell, right? So over is simply an optional adverb. Okay, the fourth one, the child stood by his story. Well, the child didn't literally stand beside his story, right? The child defended his story. Now this one, you can tell that it's a phrasal verb and that by is a verb particle, but in this case, the particle, you can't move it. You can't say the child stood his story by, but it's still a particle. Okay, the next one, a crowd stood by the auditorium entrance. By the auditorium entrance is a prepositional phrase telling us where the crowd stood, and by is a preposition. In the next one, the parade passed by, you could just say the parade passed. And so by, standing there by itself, is simply an adverb. The next one, the government stepped up its attack on the drug cartel. It didn't step up its attack, it stepped up its attack. Stepped up is a phrasal verb, and up is the verb particle. The next one, Brandon broke up with Alicia at midnight. To break up is a phrasal verb. Up is a verb particle. To substitute a single verb, though, you would want to take the preposition with it as well. Brandon dumped Alicia at midnight, something like that. And then let's see. The committee carried out its plans with no difficulty. To carry out, in this case, it didn't literally carry its plans, carry out its plans. So carry out is a phrasal verb, and out is a verb particle. You could say the committee executed its plans or something like that. And then Joe dashed out the door. Out the door is a prepositional phrase, and it's giving us information about where Joe dashed. So out is a preposition. Okay, these could be a little confusing, especially the more you think about them, but just keep practicing. And in your books, there's a good explanation about what verb particles are, and I think you will find that on page 137. Likewise, on page 136 or 135, there's a very nice chart that lists a lot of common prepositions. We're going to try 6.1 together. We're going to do the first 6, and then the remainder will be homework. So here they've italicized words, and you need to tell me whether these words are a preposition, a verb particle, or in some cases, maybe an adverb. If you'd like to press pause and try these on your own, you're welcome to. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get started. Moon, a Siberian husky, had run off many times before her owner took her on a road trip through Nevada. Okay, so we start off, we've got off. Had she run off many times, or had she run off as a single verb with a single meaning? That's what we have. So it's a phrasal verb, and off in this case, no, it isn't. I'm going to keep going because I don't want to have to record this again, but I just messed up looking at this wrong. She had run away many times. Off is simply an adverb here. See how these are tricky? That one got me. Her owner took her on a road trip. On is a preposition, and then through Nevada, through is a preposition. Okay, next one. She had always come back promptly when she ran away from home. Back, I say here, is an adverb, and then she ran away is an adverb, and then from is a preposition. While driving along with his 3 dogs, along with is a phrasal preposition. You'll see those on the list on page 135, I think it is. And then to stop for a while, for is a preposition. Moon ran away. Away is an adverb. When her owner let her out, out is an adverb. And then at a rest stop, at is a preposition. And near in near Railroad Valley is a preposition. Okay, a catch on her chain let go when she got out of the truck and she ran off into the sagebrush. All right, on and on her chain is a preposition. Out of the truck is out of is a phrasal preposition, but she ran off. Off is simply an adverb, and into is a preposition. And then number 6, her owner searched for her. For is a preposition. For again is a preposition. But finally he had, let's go back. Finally he had to give up his search. He had to give his search up. He had to surrender his search. So see how up is a particle? And then he had to drive on. On is a simple adverb telling where. All right, so to see what you can do with 7 through 12, remember, just do your best. The purpose of the homework is mainly to prepare you for the quiz. So do your best with these. Any questions that you have, let me know, but don't pull your hair out over them. It's a learning process at this point. Okay, now we're going to move to conjunctions. Maybe you remember the the little cartoon conjunction junction when you were a child? Well, that's where we're starting. So we're going to start with coordinate conjunctions. The coordinate conjunctions is a closed set. You can memorize them. You might have learned them as the fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. FANBOYS for each of those words. So the coordinating conjunctions join together phrases and clauses, words and phrases and clauses that are they're equal, like several nouns or several sentences. Correlative conjunctions are conjunctions that occur alongside another word, like both and, either and or occur as a pair, neither nor, and then not only and but also. Then we have the group of words called conjunctive adverbs. They're interesting. They're like adverbs in the kind of information that they provide. We didn't do a lot with semantic meaning with adverbs, but adverbs, it can be adverbs of degree, adverbs of manner, adverbs of time. So these words work like adverbs, but they also work like in the kind of information that they give, but they also work like conjunctions in that they link together sentences. So again, right now we're just identifying, but there is a supplementary video to this chapter that you'll need to watch before the quiz that talks about punctuation and how these words figure in to the syntax of a sentence. And then finally, the last set of conjunctions are subordinate conjunctions. So subordinate conjunctions, a lot of them look the same as prepositions, but they introduce dependent clauses. And let's see, look at the bottom of the page here. He insulted me before he left the room. Before is a subordinator introducing this subordinate clause. And you can tell subordinate clauses function like adverbs. You know how the man told his story before he left the room. See how it would fit the adverb slot? See why I wanted you to jump through the hoops in chapter 4. And then on down, the very last sentence here, I've lost my cursor. Here it comes. He insulted me before our dinner. Before our dinner is a prepositional phrase. See the difference? Before in the first sentence introduces a whole clause, but in the second sentence, before simply introduces a noun. It's a preposition. The noun doesn't have a verb or complements following it. All right, we're going to look at 6.2. We're doing this one together. We're just going to do this one all together here. And we're looking at the italicized word to identify prepositions or subordinate conjunctions. So we're just looking at those two right now. So if you want to pause and then come back, you can. I write all over my books. I'm very sorry that there wasn't time before the semester began for me to order a clean book, but yeah, just ignore all the chicken scratch. Okay, the first word we're looking at here is before. Before the opera, seniors and students lined up outside, and before is a preposition. Before the opera is the prepositional phrase. If it had read before the opera began, then it would be a subordinator, but it only has one noun following it. Okay, since some orchestra seats remain unsold at most performances, the opera company sells a small number of them, blah, blah, blah. Number 2, since we have some orchestra seats remain unsold, we have a whole clause following, a whole sentence. So since is a subordinator. And by the way, I'll stop here for a minute. Some of you may have learned at some point that you shouldn't begin a sentence with a subordinate conjunction. I have taught teachers quite a few times, people who've been in the classroom for a number of years sometimes, and they showed me the book, the grammar book, that the high school grammar book that's giving that rule out. It is perfectly okay to start a sentence with a subordinate clause. I think the reason these textbooks say to avoid it is because they're afraid that the student will end up with a sentence fragment. For example, the student might say, since some orchestra seats remained unsold at most performances, period. That would be a problem. But the whole clause, subordinate clauses are adverbs. And you can stick adverbs before at the beginning or end of a sentence. But I digress, don't I? Okay, let's go on. Rush tickets have been offered for sale since the beginning of the year. So we have since the beginning, and then of is another preposition. So since the beginning, since is a preposition in that sentence. Number 4, ticket sellers often tell older and younger people about the rush before they sell them tickets at full price. Okay, we got before and then they. And the fact that they is what's called nominative case. If it were a preposition, it would be before them and then nothing else. But it's before, and then we have they, which is a subject, and sell, and we have a whole sentence following. So before, what is it? Preposition or subordinator? If you said subordinator, you're right. Okay, number 5 here. Rush tickets go on sale 90 minutes before the performance, and sales continue until all the rush tickets have been sold. Okay, before the performance, prepositional phrase. Until all the rush tickets have been sold, until is a subordinator. I hope you're beginning to see the difference. Let's see. Any student or senior who arrives after that has to pay full price. So any student or senior who arrives has to pay full price. After that is a prepositional phrase. That is not the subject of the verb has. And then like this one, number 7, after they buy their tickets, after introduces a whole clause there, so it's a subordinator. Students and seniors have a long time to wait until curtain time. Until is a prepositional phrase. And let's see, I think we'll come back around to this assignment, 6.3. I think it's part of your homework. But then again, it's the supplementary video where we're going to talk about splices and run-ons. So I'm going to move on. Oh, good. And here it is. I like this little exercise, 6.3, because it talks about Pierre the penguin. So our goal in 6.3 is to identify the conjunctions, all the different kinds of conjunctions. So I'm doing 1 through 5 with you, and then you will do the remaining ones at home. Well, you are at home. You'll do them for homework. Okay, number 1. In this sentence, I see the word however as a conjunction, and however is a conjunctive adverb. And that is the only word that I see. But you know what? You could go through these if you want to practice for the quiz and label everything. Like most, that you could label that most is a determiner. It's an indefinite determiner. 20 is a cardinal determiner. And I won't do that because you get impatient with me. But it's really good exercise, a good exercise for you. We're going to keep going. Number 2, they're not italicized. You just have to pick up the words. But let's see. Soon after the Institute held the birthday celebration. Soon is just a plain old adverb, but after, is it a preposition or subordinator? Let's see what follows it. After the Institute, and then there's a verb, and it looks like a whole clause. So after is a subordinator. And then as a result, the skin on his body became bare. As a result is a conjunctive adverb. Oftentimes they're introduced with a semicolon, but sometimes with a period. So as a result is functioning like an adverb in the sentence about the skin on his body became bare. You could even move it. The skin on his body as a result became bare. But it's also functioning as a conjunction because it's joining those two sentences. Okay, number 3. Though marine animals have a layer of blubber to shield them from the cold, penguins have only their waterproof feathers to keep them warm. Okay, though marine animals have a layer, see how there's a whole sentence there? Though is a subordinate conjunction. And then just for fun, I'm going to look at 2. To keep, we're used to 2 being a preposition, but here a verb follows it. And remember, prepositions are in preposition to a noun, so here it's an infinitive. We'll learn about those later. Poor Pierre. After he became bald, Pierre's body was exposed to the cold. Consequently, he refused to go into the penguin tank. After is a subordinate conjunction. So sorry, the whole and the whole phrase is a subordinate clause. And then consequently is a conjunctive adverb. And then let's see, number 5. He spent his take time shivering on the sidelines while his fellow penguins played in the water. While is a subordinate, subordinator. It introduces a subordinate clause. Okay, so try 6 through 10 and see if Pierre has a happy ending or not. Now we're going to look at relative pronouns. They share features with subordinate conjunctions, but subordinate conjunctions are adverb clauses. Relative clauses are adjective clauses. Both connect dependent clauses to main clauses. Okay, here's some examples. And when we start diagramming will come back around to these, but when we work with relatives, you'll know how to work with who and whom as well. So in this sentence, the woman who married Rusty is an aerospace engineer. Who married Rusty is a relative clause, and who is the relative pronoun. And the relative pronoun has what's called an antecedent, a woman that it describes, right? Or a thing that it describes, in this case, woman. But it does have a subject, and it does have a verb, and you can see it introduces a whole clause. But we use these to keep ourselves from being too repetitive in speech. It'd be a pain to have to say, the woman is an aerospace engineer. The woman married Rusty. So it's a way of sentence combining. In the first sentence, 42A, she's the one who did the marrying. In the second one, whom, you can see the syntax mixes up a little bit when you form the subordinate clause, but Rusty's the one doing the marrying. So that's how you know how to do who and whom. The woman whom Rusty married. So whom Rusty married is also a subordinate clause. It does have a subject and a verb, does introduce a whole clause, but the syntax gets a little jumbled because you want the subordinate pronoun, which is really a direct object here. Rusty married the woman, but you want it to be right next to the noun it modifies. And again, automatically we do that. We can have possessive ones. The bicyclist whose helmet fell off. See how these clauses are all adjectives? Whose helmet fell off is describing the bicyclist. The bicyclist helmet fell off. So whose there is the relative. Again, all you're doing right now is picking them out. Here's another use of the word that. The train trip that intrigues me most. This is an adjective describing the train. And it's obviously a relative clause, and that is the relative pronoun. Train is the antecedent. Okay, I hope you get the feel of this for a little bit. Oh, and there can also be, relative clauses are always adjectives. So we visited the place where the Vikings landed. Where the Vikings landed is an adjective clause describing place. But if you look at the clause itself, the Vikings landed where, within that clause, the word where is functioning in this case as an adverb. So that's a relative adverb, but relative adverbs introduce adjective clauses. Okay, let's try 6.6. We're only going to do the first 4. I think there are only 8 of them, and then the rest of them you'll be doing for homework. Okay, all we're doing is picking them out here. For more than 20 years, astronomers have been looking for stars that can travel at extremely high velocities. All right, they've been looking for stars that can travel at extremely high velocities. What can travel at extremely high velocities? Stars can. So stars, there's the noun, and then we have this subordinate clause. It's an adjective describing the stars, and that is the relative pronoun. They're the relative conjunction, and the antecedent is stars. Okay, number 2, scientists who were studying the behavior of black holes theorized that superfast stats should occur within the Milky Way. Did I mess something up there? Stars. It should be stars. Okay, we're going to go anyway. So scientist is a subject, and then this is describing which scientists? Scientists who were studying the behavior of black holes. So that's the relative clause, and then who is the relative pronoun. Hypervelocity stars develop at the moment when the two stars that are linked gravitationally travel too close to the black hole that is at the center of the Milky Way. Goodness, okay, that's a big one. When here, remember that's a subordinate conjunction, so we'll keep going. We're looking at that. It's not a demonstrative determiner. It would be like that star, this star. So what follows it, you can see, is a whole clause. That are linked gravitationally, and that it's describing the stars. So that is the relative pronoun in this case. And then let's see, too close to the black hole that is at the center of the Milky Way. Here again, the word that is a relative pronoun. The antecedent is black hole. And one more, one of the stars is captured by the hole, causing the other star, which is in its gravitational range, to be hurled into space at a high speed. So let's see, the relative clause is right here. Which is the relative pronoun? And you can see that the antecedent is star. All right, so you can finish these out. We'll see how you do. And all this leaves are interrogatives. Interrogative These are words that introduce adjective clauses that modify nouns. So they can also be used just to introduce questions, but we're looking at interrogatives as introducers to clauses. I guess that makes sense. Who, whom, whose, which, what, where, why, when, and how, those kinds of words. Okay, so I think that by looking at some examples, I didn't give you a very good introduction to those. We can just go right through the exercise and figure out which is which. Excuse the cat here. Okay, no matter what the weather is like, scores of tourists turn up every day at Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, where Jim Morrison's tomb is found. Please tell me you know who Jim Morrison is, or I'm going to be feeling way too old. Let's see. This first part of it, I have to tell you, it stumped me for a minute. But no matter what the weather is like, what is an interrogative? It's it can be for an implied question. So what is an interrogative? But it's not functioning like an interrogative adjective there. The one that they really want us to find here is where. Because this one, we're looking for adjective clauses. So in Paris, where Jim Morrison's tomb is found, where Jim Morrison's tomb is found is an adjective clause because it's describing Paris, telling us something about Paris. The relative adverb is the word where. These people who come from all over the world gather briefly at the grave where Morrison, who performed for the Doors, is buried. This is a doozy. First, I see who, which is a relative pronoun. People is the antecedent. Then I see where Morrison is buried, and where is the relative there, and it's modifying grave. It's telling us where the grave is. And then who performed with the Doors, who is a relative pronoun, modifying Jim Morrison. Number 3, cemetery officials have asked them not to play music, to smoke pot, and not to sit on or write on other graves that are nearby. In all this long thing, I see only the graves that are nearby. So graves are nearby. See how that's a relative clause, and that is the relative pronoun. Let's see, number 4, in the 1970s and 1980s, whoever succeeded in locating the tomb marked the trail with arrows that were labeled Jim. Whoever is an interrogative pronoun. It's not working as a relative, it's just an interrogative pronoun. And then, let's see, locating the tomb. Wait, whoever's marked the trail with arrows. Oh, here I go. That were labeled Jim. That is modifying arrows. So that is a relative. What was even worse, we're on number 5 here, they often wrote messages that were addressed to Jim on other graves in the cemetery. So what is an interrogative? And then that here is a relative. That's it. Then one more. Not surprisingly, this behavior upset Parisians, excuse the typo, whose family tombs were being defaced by visitors who seemed unaware that the cemetery was still being used. Okay, this one is also a doozy. Let's start with whose family tombs. It modifies Parisians. Again, should be an A there. So whose is a relative. We're being defaced by visitors who seemed unaware. Who is modifying visitors. And then unaware, and then that the cemetery was still being used. This is a different kind of clause. So this that in this case is not a relative. There's no noun that it's modifying here. So the word that, it can do a lot of things, can't it? Let me get on through this video, but as soon as I am done, I do want to remind you to look at chapter 6 at the supplementary video to this chapter, because it goes into a lot more detail about conjunctions. So if you're having trouble with them, you definitely want that video. You'll want it anyway. Remember, you get credit for watching all these videos. Okay, just for fun, see if you can make sense of, see these words right here? Just that string of words, just using punctuation, whatever kind you need, and capitalization. See if you can make sense of it. So this is just for fun. Give it a pause, press pause, give it a try, and then in a few minutes come back. All right? So if you want to try it, press pause now. Okay, are you back? Are you ready to see the solution? All right, this is the way that you can make it make sense. Just working with the word that. That that is. That that is not, is not. Is that it? It is. Sort of an existential statement there. So the word that, here that is a determiner. That that is. Here that is a pronoun. And then we have same with a determiner and then as a pronoun. And then is that it as a pronoun again. So again, that was just something for fun. All right, that covers chapter 6. There is an answer key word bank that will help you through the quiz and that you should take a look at that lists all of the words we've gone over in chapters 5 and 6. So definitely spend some time with that. And let me know if you have any questions at all. And let me know what you think once you look at the other video as well. And I hope you all are having a great day. Thanks so much for listening to this web video. Bye-bye.